All right. Feet planted, weight back, head down, keep my eye on the ball. Don't swing too hard. Ooh, but don't decelerate. Okay, here we go. Nice, easy swing. Crap! 4! All right, Daisy, thanks for joining us. We're excited to have you on the show today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be on your podcast.
Yeah, so I know we've known each other for a couple years. You coached me both virtually and when I originally came to Charleston last year. But for our listeners, why don't you give us a little background, where you've been, where you've come from, and maybe where you're going?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you can probably tell from the accent, I am not from America, but I had the pleasure of living in America for 10 years. Got a golf scholarship to the States. And from there, I started to study more into golf biomechanics, so how the body affects the swing. And I specialize in speed and distance training. So right now I'm back in the UK. I'm based in the southeast of England. But luckily enough, I provide lots of online services with regards to golf fitness, golf lessons, and online training. So I'm accessible to anyone worldwide. If you wanted to come see me in person, then a golf trip would need to be in order, which I think we've discussed before, haven't we?
Yes, we're going to make it happen. We're going to make it
Yeah.
happen for sure. So I guess we'll start with the biggest thing is a lot of people starting off in golf, there is a discussion about whether or not it is worth getting a coach. And I think some people are like, oh, my buddies can teach me, or, I'm just going to learn it. Or there are tons, especially post COVID, there are tons of resources online. But there's definitely value in having somebody that knows you, knows your swing, has watched you progress. I guess from your perspective, what's the number one reason you hear people give for not wanting a coach? Like, what would you say is the biggest friction point?
I think there's a lot of stuff online these days, isn't there? Accessible, like loads of great tips, drills. I mean, YouTube is just infested. I actually ban the word YouTube from my lessons because it gets so annoying that people bring up YouTube stuff. As a coach, it's like a pet peeve, mainly because there is great content out there, but it might not be what you need. And it might not be what you need at this specific time in your golf journey. And so having someone be able to recognize your body type, your body shape, maybe some previous injuries that you might have had, or even past sports that you've played, and how that's going to affect your golf swing and how quickly you adapt. But I know from my experience through COVID, I had a lot of beginners golfers come to me to learn how to play, and a couple of them had, been on YouTube for 6 months to 8 months. Then they gotten to a point where they just couldn't get any better, and they were so overloaded with all this information, they didn't know what to think about. They had like 20 different swing thoughts. And so they came to me with some bad habits that they had picked up. And unfortunately, as a coach, it's hard to get rid of bad habits, because once you start to make certain adaptations, you can't get rid of them. Your brain stores them forever. So they're always going to be there. So I had other clients that come to me, didn't go on YouTube, and it was so much easier because they didn't pick up those bad habits. And I got them down to, a 12 handicap within a year. So just by, spending the money on coaching services is definitely more valuable than, paying for rounds or paying for subscriptions to cookie cutter online content. Because there's some good content out there, but as I said, and as probably you've experienced, you must have experienced a lot of advice on there that maybe was great, but not for you at that time in your journey.
Oh, for sure. Well, and it's interesting that you call out like different sports. So, as you know, I played softball for a long time. And as
Mhm.
you have seen, that affects how I swing. I have years of a softball swing. And even though I've been playing golf regularly for a couple years now, 2 years of swinging a golf club does not completely erase the 10 years of swinging a baseball bat.
Yep.
And before I met you, I did take, when I first started golf, when I took my first lessons, I did know enough to be like, I should go talk to someone that actually knows how to do this. And I took the lessons, but then I had that break kind of in my regular playing where I didn't play very regularly. I didn't keep that the muscle mechanics there. And I picked up bad habits. And even working with you, it's taken me time to get rid of those.
Yeah.
and sometimes they still kind of creep in. So it is something, if I could go back, I would have stuck, well, for multiple reasons, I would have stuck with golf after having lessons for the first time. But to be able to get rid of that, because I know it's frustrating to me. I can feel
Yeah.
the difference in my swing. I get to like hear it. I'm like, oh crap.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, that's
Exactly.
definitely something that is hard for a lot of people.
Yeah. Even just
I
have a
guess for,
second
oh god, yeah.
even just having a second set of eyes. So like you might get given good information, but then you might not be doing it right and not have a clue. And so you'd be standing there thinking you're doing good and doing all this practice, and you're actually ingraining something that doesn't look quite right. So having a second set of eyes is also important, just to make sure that you're on the right track.
Well, and a second set of eyes that knows what they're looking for, I think is
Yes.
incredibly important, because I can watch somebody swing, but that doesn't necessarily mean I can see if, like, if it's really bad, sure, I can tell like the
Yeah.
basic mechanics if it's not great. But I mean, a lot of people would say that Jim Furyk's swing is ugly, but he's also one of the best golfers in the world. So like what you're looking for is not necessarily the obvious.
Yes, that's a really good point, actually, because you've got to find a swing that matches your body, and for Jim, that's his swing. He can repeat it, so it's all about finding something that's repeatable for you. And I think that in the golf world, we get so obsessed with it looking pretty and matching all these positions and P1, P2, and it's just like, let's just keep it simple. Let's relate the golf swing to a movement that you're familiar with. Like for you, softball, use the power of that softball swing and just adapt it slightly to a golf swing, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's actually interesting because I took some of my power away to work on the swing mechanics. And now I'm kind of slowly adding it back. And while it was frustrating to lose distance at the first half of that process, I'm a hell of a lot more accurate than I was a couple of years ago. And that's
Yes.
obviously a huge improvement.
That's awesome. Yeah. It's hard sometimes to balance the distance and the accuracy game, isn't it?
Yes. It's a careful and frustrating
Yeah.
dance.
Sometimes you've got to sacrifice a bit.
So that's actually an interesting like lead into to my next question. What would be your advice? So a lot of people do start golf at a younger age, but I would say a majority of people that you see on the course actually start later. So for me, I didn't really start playing until my mid to late 20s, which is
Mm.
a lot older. So, Shane, my husband, played in high school and through college. So he had definitely an advantage. But for people coming in later in life, what would be your advice for them, if knowing that they might have some of those, other sport habits, or injuries are probably more prevalent at that age? Like, what would be your advice for them?
Yeah. I always find that with people who are 25 years and older trying to learn golf, our brain is like not as plastic, so we can't like learn new things as easy. So yeah, you do have an advantage if you pick it up younger, but as you said, most people are starting to learn in their late 20s, 30s, even 40s. And it's never too late. And I always find as a coach, it's really good to relate it to something that you've done before. So if you've played tennis, I'll try and keep it as simple and as natural as possible, because as we all know, it's pretty hard to hit that little golf ball in the center of the club face straight every time. And trying to focus on that too much can hinder your swing and make it quite robotic. So trying to relate it to something that you've already done as a kid, for me as a coach, is the best way to open up your athleticism and get you moving more freely without too many swing thoughts. So if you're an older player starting, try and relate as much of it as you can to an athletic motion you've done before. And I mean, we've all thrown a ball. Something as simple as throwing a ball has the same mechanics, the same rotation as a golf swing. It's just on a different plane of movement. But keeping things as simple as possible. And when you're first starting, try not to hit too many golf balls. Try and make a lot of swings without a ball, and allow yourself to the freedom to make mistakes and not be too concerned about results. That would be my best advice to people starting that are older.
Yeah, the not being concerned with the results is sometimes a hard one. I know that was hard for me. And my sister, who you've also coached, had a hard time with that, because if you are competitive, which a lot of people who have ever participated in sports are, not having a great score, not being able to easily achieve that good score is very frustrating. But
Yeah.
to your point, I actually started this year, I didn't keep score for the majority of my rounds this year. I only went out and I focused on just good, clean swings. And I don't know for sure because I didn't actually keep score, but just on how I played, I'm sure I dropped 10 or 15 strokes off most of my rounds just because I wasn't stepping up to the ball and, thinking 30 things in the back of my head. It was step up and swing more from feel than the analytical brain of freaking out of like, oh, I got to do these 18 things to make sure it goes straight.
Exactly. And I think what I did with your sister, Colleen, actually, I told her to get a net for her garden because she was so obsessed with ball flight and so obsessed with what the ball's doing that it sort of sometimes slows down the process. So I recommend getting a net because you can't see where the ball goes and you're so then focused on the feels of the new move in the swing, and it's a lot easier to let that go. But that's really good that you did that. It's very hard to do. I challenge everyone who's listening to this to do it because it is really difficult, especially if you're an analytical person like me and you, to try not to count your score and just let it go. And as you said, just hit clean golf shots and enjoy it more.
And I will say it was hard to start, and especially when I was playing well, I'm like, oh, I want to know like how much better I'm doing. But I didn't. And not only did I improve, I had more fun this year when I was playing. I enjoyed my rounds far more than when I was stressing about, oh, I'm stepping up, like, oh, this could be an eagle, this could be a birdie, oh crap, I'm gonna double. I had way more fun when I just kind of let that go.
Yeah,
And that
focus on the
also
shot.
just enjoys more enjoyment. Yeah.
Yeah, staying in the present is so key in golf. When I played my best golf, when I was shooting par under par, I wouldn't. You asked me what my score was on hole 16. I wouldn't be able to tell you what it was, and I wouldn't want to know. And if you told me, I'd be like, no, I don't want to know what it is because it will ruin my last few holes mentally. So yeah, it's definitely a good challenge for beginner golfers. Is try not to count your score. And enjoy it more, and you'll actually start to see your score improving.
So let's talk a little bit more about the actual process of practicing. I know this is something that you talk about on your page a lot, not only the different drills to do, but volume. You mentioned like, going and hitting without a ball, just kind of, getting those swing mechanics. So what would be, if you were going to create a program, the ratio of like, how long do you think time on the range versus time on the course? I know golf wisdom says spend more time on short game over driving overall, but what would be your ideal mix of all of those elements if you were going to build a program for a client?
Yeah, so I actually come across more my male clients actually that don't like to hit the driving range. They're all about just going straight to the course. And I always explain to them, they'll come to me for a lesson and then I'll be like, oh, how much practice did you get in? I'm like, well, I played here that day, I played there, then I played there. So I've gotten about 4 rounds in before since our last lesson. And I was like, okay, but what about range time? What about practice time? None. And they hadn't translated what we learned in the last lesson. So now we're working on exactly the same thing. The reason why is because you cannot practice a new motion under pressure. So you've got to take the pressure away of the golf course and making a score, and sometimes even making contact. And that's where dry swings come into it. So when you're learning a new feel, take the ball away. Sometimes take the club away, put your hands across your chest, feel the motion, then add the club in, then add a ball in. And as you said, there's kind of a key to practicing. And I definitely don't recommend hundreds and hundreds of balls beaten away one after the other. Reason being is because that tends to groove more bad swings than good. So quality over quantity is essential when it comes to practice. And as a coach, I like to give drills, as you've experienced, like things like the runner's foot drill and things like that. I think that you can provide feedback on this too, but I think that really helps make the practice more efficient because you're actually doing something that is helping you move better. By doing drills and practice programs, that translates a lot better to the course. So don't be standing there beating hundreds of balls, but spend 20% of your time on the driving range. I'd say a good 40% of your time on pitching and short game, and then the rest on putting. there is also an area there where you should be working on speed, because speed's so important and has been correlated with handicap now for amateur golfers. So if you look online and you compare clubhead speed to amateur handicap, you'll see a direct correlation. So I think now, from my perspective, being a speed specialist, I like it when people chuck in, about an hour and a half each week of just speed work to help with distance.
Yeah, like you said, the drills definitely have helped me. I know, one, it also not only does it help like with the movement and kind of recognizing it, I enjoy it, especially like the runner's foot, because it helps me place exactly what it should feel like versus and I always record myself and I usually send you the videos. And when I swing and the club is still standing there and I'm like, oh, well, didn't do that one right. But I know what it felt like versus what it feels like when it was supposed to. And definitely thinking about when you go and practice and kind of having that structure. Because a lot of people, and there's nothing wrong with going to the driving range and just hitting a few balls to let off steam. But I think if you're looking to practice, having that structure is very valuable because it says, okay, I'm going to work on X and then kind of get that feeling. And then having things that you're planning on when you're doing practice helps you kind of structure that session so that you are making the progress. And I do think it's interesting. I've heard back and forth discussion on other podcasts or in journals talking about the time on the range versus time on the course. And everybody is like, oh, get out and just play, rounds. That's better practice. But to your point, on the course, unless you're not following golf etiquette, you shouldn't be doing multiple balls. If you go through the swing and it's not right, you don't just get to drop another ball and go again. And you don't have that opportunity to kind of work on that and figure out, okay, what went wrong in my swing? So I agree with you. I think and get frustrated. Yes. I think there is value. I understand where people are coming from of, oh, just get out and play. Yes. But it's not, golf one is an individual sport and you need that time as an individual to be able to practice. So I definitely agree that being on the range has its time and place and you can build a lot of value like that. I know you had your post a couple weeks ago about variable versus blocked. And I think you kind of touched on this of, don't go and hit 100 balls. But I think our listeners would be interested, for those who haven't seen your post, what what variable versus blocked is and what that importance is.
Yeah, absolutely. So blocked practice is where you're doing the same thing over and over again. So an example of that would be 57 irons at the same target. Variable practice would be an example. Would that be 1 7-iron to the white flag, an 8-iron to the blue, and then a rescue wood to the red? And varying distances, varying targets, because that's more what we have on the golf course. As you said, we don't get another go. Every shot is different. Every environment's different. Making your lie bad, having your feet above the ball, things like that. Practicing things like that on the driving range, variable practice, will help you transfer it to the course. But there's a process in our brain of how we learn as humans. And the first thing to do when you're learning a brand new feeling or a brand new motion is to do block practice. So there is a time and a place for it. When you're learning a new motion, you do it over and over and over again until you feel confident with that new feeling. And if you're doing drills, you can do that drill, let's say 10 times in a row. That's blocked. Variable would be once you've got that feel and you've learned that new motion, then you go into variable practice. And this is how you test the retention of how well you learn. So you vary it up and you go 1 drill to 1 normal swing, or 1 drill to 4 normal swings, and try and translate that feeling over. And then once you've got that feeling and you feel comfortable without the drill, now you put yourself to test. You do variable practice, as I said. Treat it like a golf course. So tee off, hit your driver, find 2 markers on the driving range and outline your fairway and imagine it. And this was something that Sir Nick Faldo gave me advice when I was 14. And I played in the Faldo series in Brazil in the World Grand Finals. And he was doing a workshop for us juniors, and it was amazing. The one piece of advice he said is, don't hit 57 irons in a row on a driving range and then get your driver out, because I'm sure if you're looking at every amateur's bag, the 7-iron is the only club that has a mark on it. It's like the favorite club. He's like, vary it up, hit a driver, hit a wedge, then hit a 7-iron, and just play more golf once you've retained the new movement. Play more golf courses on the driving range if you can't get out. And that is why coaches say, get out into the golf course and actually put it to practice. But you don't want to be out on the golf course when you've got a brand new feeling. That just puts too much pressure on you. And it can really frustrate you, because I know from experience, it's definitely frustrated me in the past.
So it's interesting you bring up the 7-iron, because I know for a long time that was the first club that I would pull out the range. Reason being was when the first time I took lessons, that's the club that the coach told me to pull out. So when you're going to warm up for a round, what is the first club that you pull out of your bag?
54-degree wedge. I start with the bottom of the bag. I always recommend that as well, because it's more of a half swing. You get the motion, you get the connection, you get the tempo down. As you know, it's easy to fat a wedge. It's easy to thin a wedge. And so just gaining that nice feel, that nice connection and rhythm with a half swing first. And then I get, my favorite is actually an 8-iron. So my 8-iron's got a bigger mark on it than the other clubs. And then I would go to my 8-iron if I'm learning a new motion, and then a long iron, because as we all know, long irons are way harder to hit. So it's really important to use those and practice with those. So yeah, I like to vary it up a lot in my practice, but I do start from the bottom of the bag. And it is one of those things, when I see a client start with driver, I'm like, oh no, oh no, oh no, 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 no.
Yes, love it, love it. No, I do
Literally.
find that I've seen people at the range that just whip out their driver and start going. The other thing for me is I can't start with driver, probably because I work full time and I sit and I'm sure I slouch. Every time I go to the course or the range, I need to like warm up. I need to like move things around, and just, the full swing with the driver is not really conducive to warming up your body. And as someone that did manage to hurt myself as a result of golf last year, I am way more like aware of taking care of my body and making sure that I am prepared to go out and swing the club without injuring myself, which is actually something, another, to your point, your whole process and your background has a lot to do with the biomechanics and preparing your body for a swing. I know you and I have talked a lot about different training and stretches. So what do you think is some of the most important aspects that golfers can do without a club, away from the range, away from the course, just preparing your body for this sport?
Yeah, so I have a lot of great dynamic warm-ups that I give to my clients that you can do either before you go to the course or on the driving range, with no equipment. You don't need equipment to get yourself warmed up. Something as simple as 10 body weight squats, touch your toes, reach to the sky, holding a club out in front of you, pushing it into the ground, and then opening one hand out into a rotation. Simple motions without equipment needed, just a golf club, can get you moving, get those joints loosened up from being so tight, because most of us sit at a desk all day. And also the main goal of a warm-up is to get blood flow to the working muscles. So our glutes, our quads, our big muscles that are going to help us hit that first tee shot just as far as we would on the third hole. And then also preventing injury, because if you're cold and your muscles are tight and there's no blood flow, you can put yourself at risk for injury. And as you and I know, it sucks when you're injured. But before that, you think, I'm fine. I can just rock up to the first tee and I'll get away with it. But when you do actually get injured, and I hope none of you do, but just respect your body a little bit more, because warming up for 5-10 minutes is something you can do that will help you play golf for the whole summer. Whereas one bad swing or fault swing can injure you, and you've got no golf for a few months, and that's like awful. So taking care of yourself is very important, and warming up can be really simple.
Well, I think golf is one of the few sports that you can do for a very long time. I mean, it says something that you see a lot of retired folks live in a golf community, but part of that is predicated on taking care of yourself so that you can still go out and swing.
Mm-hmm.
My stepmom is very close to retirement age. I don't think she's quite there yet. and she's been golfing since she was very young, but she takes, good care of her body in terms of warming up, stretching after a round, and kind of being mindful of her body. And she'll still walk 18. When I play with her, yeah, it's awesome. And it's funny because I've played in some of her senior ladies leagues, and she and I are usually the only two that are walking, which is telling. I mean, that's definitely something that when I'm her age and older, I want to be able to walk 18 and have no issues. That would be a goal of mine for not only for golf, but just, quality of life.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, as we age, we lose muscle mass naturally. Every 10 years, we lose a percentage of muscle mass. And so just keep moving and walking. As you said, that's amazing that she can walk 18 holes easily. I see it out there a lot as well. My neighbour, in fact, I found out how old my neighbour is here. Little old lady, she's lovely. She looks at me funny because I was driving. So I think she thought I was too young to be driving a car. I found out how old she is. She's 94. She walks a mile into town and back every day. And I was just like, wow. And that's just from pure consistency, from walking every day. So something as simple as walking and just warming up is going to keep you moving for years to come and keep golf in your life for longer.
Yeah, that's definitely the goal.
I want to hit on something real quick with warm-ups.
Oh, definitely.
I've got a really good bit of information here. So too often do I see people stick two clubs together and swing them to warm up.
I don't know if I've ever noticed that.
Okay, well, if you haven't noticed it, what people do is they get a 6-iron and a 7-iron, they put them together, and they swing it to get warmed up because they think, oh, it's really heavy, it's going to get me nice and strong. From a biomechanical perspective, it's really bad for your golf swing. So anything heavier than 15% is going to throw your mechanics out, and you'll start to make bad compensations, and it will put a lot of pressure on your lower back. So I always recommend, there's things out there like the orange whip. It's a great tool. It's a little bit heavier. You've got the whippy shaft in it. That's great to sort of get the motions going and get warmed up, and it's not too heavy. But I never recommend anything like swinging like weights or anything that's heavier than 15% of your driver, because that just throws mechanics out and you're actually doing yourself worse than good. So a warm-up doesn't have to be swinging a heavy golf club. It can be just simple as squats, rotations and movements. You don't need to be swinging a golf club to warm up for golf.
That makes sense. You know what I have seen the two of is baseball bats. A lot of players will have two baseball bats. So I wonder if there's some connection there, if people see baseball players do that. But no, that's a good point. And I love your point of you don't have to have a club in your hand to warm up, get the blood flowing, and, focus on the movement.
Yeah, you've got some good exercises on your page as well. I've got some on my page as well, so you can check them out. And if you want access to my dynamic warm-up, I have a free one that I can send links to. So you just shoot me a message on my Instagram, Golf with Daisy May. I'll be happy to send you guys a link to a body weight warm-up that you can do before you play.
Yeah, so I will drop all of your information in the show notes and when I share this podcast on all of my channels. But before we wrap up, why don't you let everybody know where they can find you, so that you can go to my page and find Daisy. I've shared her content plenty. I think I even have a video from when you coached me last year that I saved and posted. But let everybody know where they can find you, so you can help people keep playing.
Absolutely. So you can find me on Instagram at Golf with Daisy May. And my email address is at golfwithdaisyMay@gmail.com. And my website, no surprises, golfwithdaisyMay.com. So you can read more about myself and my past experiences and services I provide. As I said, I provide online coaching and online golf fitness specific stuff as well. So if anyone's interested in keeping their body healthy and moving better for golf, I can help them with that, as well as hitting the ball straighter and more consistently.
And I can attest as a happy client that she is awesome. Both my sister and I have used Daisy, and we'll probably continue to. No, not probably will. We'll definitely.
I hope so.
And the only reason I've ever slacked off was because of time, not because of want. But I mean, I did move 900 miles and get married in the last year. So this year, yes, but 2022, I'm getting back on the regular cadence, and Daisy's going to get me down to a 12 handicap, because that is not what my handicap is right now.
And I'm at a new indoor facility, which is great. So I can start producing a lot more video content and testing different drills and products to help you guys get better at golf. That's the goal.
Yes, Daisy's last 2 posts ago, a drill that she posted, I will have a video going up on my page. I gave it a try.
Oh,
So check
how did it
that
go?
out. You have to watch the video.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
You can watch the video and let me know.
All right.
All right. Thank you for joining us, Daisy. I'm sure we will have you back again, and I will see everybody on next week's episode.
All right. Thanks for having me.